According to a 2022 study from the University of Texas, the average person spends over 240 hours a year explaining themselves to people who aren't actually listening. 240 hours! That's 10 full days of your life gone, justifying, defending, translating your feelings into words that somehow never land. But you stopped. You used to write the paragraphs. You used to send the long texts. You used to explain your boundaries twice, 3 times, hoping this time they'd finally get it. And then one day, you didn't. You put the phone down. You closed the chat. And here's what nobody talks about. You didn't feel guilty. You felt light. So when did that change? When did you stop explaining yourself? And more importantly, why does it feel so much like peace?
Part 1. The Before.
The over-explainer. You weren't always like this. There was a time when you believed that if you just found the right words, anyone would understand. You thought confusion was just a communication problem, that their resistance meant you hadn't explained well enough. So you tried harder. You sent the voice note. You wrote the email. You stayed up late crafting the perfect message that was honest but not too honest, firm but not too cold. You were the one who apologized for having a boundary. But here's what you didn't realize back then. Explaining yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you is not communication. It's self-abandonment. And you did it for years, because somewhere along the way, you learned that your no wasn't enough, that you had to perform, justify, and persuade just to be left alone. Until the day you asked yourself a question that changed everything. Why am I spending my energy on people who spend zero energy trying to understand me? And you didn't have a good answer. So you stopped.
Part 2. The Shift. What happens in your brain? Psychologists have studied this exact shift. It's not that you got colder. It's not that you stopped caring. Your brain actually reallocated resources. Let me explain. Dr. Roy Baumeister's research on decision fatigue found that every time you explain yourself, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reasoning and self-control, burns through glucose like fuel. Each explanation drains you a little more. Now add emotional labor, a term coined by sociologist Arlie Hochschild. Emotional labor is the energy you spend managing other people's feelings while suppressing your own. Every time you explain a boundary and watch them get upset, and then you manage their upset, that's unpaid work. You've been working a full-time job called making other people comfortable with your choices, and your brain finally quit. A 2021 study in the Journal of Experimental Psychology found that people who stop over-explaining report 40% lower stress levels in social situations, not because they became avoidant, because they stopped treating every interaction like a courtroom where they had to defend their innocence. Your silence isn't shutdown, it's strategic conservation. Part 3. The Deeper Root. Where this began. But here's the real question. Where did your brain learn that you had to over-explain in the first place? For many of us, the answer lives in a place we don't like to visit. Dr. Marcia Linehan, the creator of dialectical behavior therapy, talks about something called invalidating environments. An invalidating environment is a place, usually a childhood home, where your feelings were dismissed, mocked, or ignored. You'd say, "I'm sad," and they'd say, "You're too sensitive." You'd say, "That hurt," and they'd say, "Stop overreacting." So, what did you learn? You learned that your internal experience wasn't enough, that you had to prove your feelings with evidence, that you had to build a case like a lawyer just to have your pain acknowledged.
And that strategy worked back then. It kept you safe. It helped you survive. But here's the trap. What works in an invalidating environment becomes a liability in a healthy one. You kept explaining yourself long after you left that house, long after those people were gone. You kept performing your worth like a Broadway show for an empty theater. And one day you realized you don't have to audition anymore. Part 4. The crucial distinction. Your unique framework. So let me give you a metaphor that's more useful than walls versus boundaries. Think of your energy as soil. Good soil doesn't explain itself. It doesn't justify why it can't grow certain plants. It just holds what it can and rejects what it can't. When you over-explain, you're not protecting your soil. You're overwatering the wrong seeds. You're giving nutrients to people who keep planting thorns and wondering why you're bleeding. Here's the distinction I want you to remember. Explaining is hospitality. Silence is sanctuary. Hospitality means leaving the door open for debate. You're hosting their doubt, their questions, their endless "but why?" Sanctuary means closing the door without slamming it. You're not hiding, you're just not letting everyone track mud across your floor. And your nervous system knows the difference. Dr. Stephen Porges, yes, the same one from Polyvagal theory, calls this neuroception. It's your brain's ability to detect safety or threat without you thinking about it. You know that feeling when you're about to send an explanation and your stomach clenches? That's neuroception. That's your body saying, this person will weaponize your words, save your breath. And when you finally listen to that feeling, when you put the phone down, that relief you feel, that's not avoidance. That's your soil resting. Part 5. The reframe. You're not running, you're redeploying. Society has a lot of names for people like you. Distant, avoidant, bad at relationships. He just shuts down. She never explains herself. But those words assume that connection is always good, that more explanation is always better. Here's a different word, redeployment. You're not running away from anything. You're redeploying your energy toward people who speak the same language as your nervous system. Let me tell you about the Harvard 75-year study, the longest study on happiness ever conducted. They followed hundreds of men from adolescence to old age, and the number one predictor of happiness wasn't how many people you had in your life. It wasn't how often you talked or how much you shared. It was mutual emotional responsiveness. That means, do the people in your life respond to you? Do they see you? Do they adjust their behavior when you say something hurts? Or do you have to explain the same thing 50 times? Here's the truth the study doesn't shout from the rooftops. A small circle of responsive people beats a large crowd of people who make you perform for understanding. You didn't lose the ability to explain yourself. You gained the wisdom to know who deserves the explanation.
Part 6. Call to action and community. So if you're watching this and you've felt guilty for not explaining yourself lately, stop. That guilt wasn't yours. It was installed by people who benefited from your over-explaining, by environments that demanded you prove your pain. Your silence is not a void, it's a selection. Here's what I want you to do. Think of the last time you stopped explaining and felt peace instead of panic. Drop a single emoji in the comments, a closed mouth or a seedling. I read every single one, not because I have to, because I want to know who else is learning to let their soil rest. This is Pascal Method. Protect your energy. That's the method.